And welcome to the Planet X podcast, episode number 6. And since it's a new year, we're going to kind of do a little bit of year in review. So I'm Chris.
And I'm Mike.
And we're going to kind of limit ourselves to movies, at least this go around, maybe a little bit of TV. Otherwise, we'll be here for 6 hours. And I'm sure you don't want to hear us ramble for 6 hours.
Yeah, we're well, unless you want to listen to like 6 episodes or 5.5 in a row.
Yeah.
Sometimes we do ramble. Last week, I think I almost feel like we bitched a little too much last week. I want to be when all was said and done, I thought about it. I'm like, I wish I delved a little bit more on the positive stuff of Rock and Roll Hall of Fame than the negative stuff. But something about that just gets me bitchy.
Yeah, I agree. Rock and Roll Hall of Fame just pisses me off. Although, as we said last week, they kind of got it right this year, so that's a positive, man. That's a positive.
Yeah, hopefully we'll get some of them cool performances again. That's the best part of that. Yeah. But I guess,
absolutely.
Right now we're going to concentrate on movies, like we said. I guess we can talk a little bit about anything. Usually for me, the year in review is really movie as far as entertainment goes. I mean, music is so subjective that you can listen to something and be like, there could be a really good song, but in the course of a year, you hear it 1,000 times and you're like, oh my God, I'm so sick of that song. And it has to like go away for a little bit for you to realize, oh, that's a pretty good song. Yeah.
Yeah. And there's also a lot of stuff that's really, really good and really quality as far as music goes that you don't hear. You don't hear on regular radio at all. And it's not like you've got, music stations on your TV that'll play the videos for the stuff either.
Actually, what I've been doing lately, I've been the past week or so, my access into movies has been on YouTube on the Austin City Limits YouTube page.
Okay.
And there's some bands I kind of have heard of and things I've picked up from satellite radio. So I listened to and watched a little bit of the Alabama Shakes, Old Crow Medicine Show, a couple of these kind of folky, country, bluesy type of bands. Okay. Just that Austin City Limits kind of fun, offbeat type of stuff.
Yeah, I haven't watched Austin City Limits in God knows how long.
With the Palladia channel has that Later with Jules Hollander show where he has 5 or 6 performers on and he just kind of it's almost like a theater in the round type of thing where he just cuts to one stage. It's like if the stage is a half oval, I guess, and there'll be 5 stages there, and then this band plays, and then that band plays, and then another band plays, and then and they just kind of keep going back and forth through the night for different bands. So you're not listening to 3 songs from one band in a row. You're kind of getting one, then you're getting somebody else, then you're getting somebody else. And he kind of talks with the bands a little bit. And that's interesting. I've enjoyed some things. I haven't necessarily discovered anything that I'm like, oh, I'm going to go out and pursue this music. But I've found some stuff I've never heard of before. I don't know how new it is.
Yeah. That's always fun being introduced to, a band you haven't heard of, or, maybe being reintroduced to a band, you kind of forgot about.
Yeah.
So,
and the thing is, it's musicians. It's not some prepackaged
bubblegum pop.
Yeah. Pop singer. It's not a dancer that they auto-tuned to the point that she can sing.
Yeah. So what I've got in front of me, and we'll go through this a little bit. I've got the yearly box office in front of me, and I figured I'd kind of run down maybe top 10, and maybe any surprises later, of movies that didn't do so well. I think you've got a couple lists up that are best of, worst of kind of movies as well.
I kind of found some critic review rate, movies, off like Rotten Tomatoes with the best reviews, and then I found some people that put together a worst review list. It's amazingly difficult to find a worst review list that isn't clickbait. That, you know, if you're like, oh, the 17 worst movies of 2015, but you got to click on the page
and you have to
18 times,
17 pages. Yeah. And when that happens, I'll usually get one or two in, and I'll be like, hell with this. This is too much work. So, as far as box office numbers go, no surprise here. Star Wars Episode 7, The Force Awakens, is ruled the box office in 2015 and is still ruling the box office. I know it just passed Jurassic World, or it just passed Titanic or something like that, as far as all-time numbers, I think.
Right.
Or at least domestically. But in 2015, and it was out for all of like 2.5 weeks. Domestically, it took in $742 million. And it doesn't look like that's slowing down anytime soon.
You know, I don't know if I brought up this point when we did our whole Star Wars episode, but one of the things that I was slightly disappointed with was The Force Awakens was that John Ratzenberg didn't come in to reprise his character. I don't know if it was offered or ever brought up, and nothing purely other than the fact that just for John Ratzenberg to be in another multi-$100 million grossing film.
Yeah.
Because he's got all those Pixar movies. He has Empire.
Who knows? He may show up in he may show up in another. He may show up in Rogue One or whatever.
That'd be pretty cool. You know, it's that's that funny little footnote when you talk about the highest grossing actors of all time, and you're like, Cliff from Cheers has been in some huge movies, or at least huge moneymaker movies. Yeah.
Yeah. Coming in at number 2 for the year was Jurassic World, which I saw and I loved. I absolutely loved it. It was probably the best sequel to the original Jurassic Park. That took in about $652 million over the course of the year.
Jurassic World really, I mean, even the theme of the movie was like fall in love with dinosaurs again.
Yeah.
You know, and that's what they gave you. And they're like, you know, the villain was the bells and whistles dinosaur, and it was like, we're gonna take that away. And
I loved it. I enjoyed it pretty much from start to finish. Although I do think it was probably 20 minutes too long. But that's just kind of how they make movies now. The last 20 minutes usually you tend to drag a little bit. Number 3 was Avengers: Age of Ultron. That took in about $460 million over the summer. Saw that, loved it. Not as good as the first one, but still enjoyable.
Yeah, I think they could have. I almost feel like they watered down the Ultron character a little bit.
Yeah.
That he went from, he opened up and he came on like feeling so menacing. And then by the end, it got kind of basic, but I mean, it follows your comic book formula.
Yeah. I do kind of feel the same way, that his character came on really strong in the beginning, and even in the trailers, he felt very menacing. But then by the end of the movie, he really, not that he wasn't a threat, but it just kind of fizzled a little bit. But all in all, I enjoyed the movie.
Oh, me too.
And I'm amazed. I've actually seen all of the top 4 movies, which is a first for me, I think. Number 4 was Inside Out. That took in about $360 million over the year. Definitely enjoyable.
I have it. I picked up the Blu-ray, and we haven't watched it yet. But I heard it's good. It's that good kind of Pixar heartwarming stuff that you expect.
Yeah. And again, it did kind of fall, for me, it did kind of fall into that, maybe ran a little bit longer than it should have. It could have been wrapped up a little quicker. but all in all, solid movie. I highly recommend it. Now we start getting into stuff I haven't seen. Furious 7 was in at number 5. That's $350 million, which was a huge take. I mean, it was a huge movie this summer. A lot of it due to Paul Walker's death, I think.
I think it was a combination because people still they kind of shot that series in the arm, and it just keeps making money. I haven't seen a one of them, and I never really had any interest when they started. When it's now become this phenomenon that it is, and 7 movies later, I'm like, maybe I should watch some of these.
I've seen bits and pieces of the first one. I've seen most of, I guess, 5, which is whatever the first one with The Rock is. And I enjoyed it for what it was. I mean, it's just it's an action movie with fast cars, which is you kind of can't go wrong with that. Number 6 was Universal going to the well one more time with Minions. I'm kind of on the fence about seeing that one. I mean, I love the Despicable Me movies, but I don't really know if I can sit through 2.5 hours of Minions.
It's really, from what I understand, it's really just for the kids. It's a cash grab type of film from the sounds of it, but it's fine. It's a kids movie. Let it be a kids movie. It's a good marketing thing. They're this generation Smurfs.
Yeah.
They're just the cute little multifaceted, posable, kind of universally beloved little stupid things. There's nothing to really hate about it, but there's nothing that's necessarily drawing me to see that Minion movie.
Yeah. I'm sure I'll catch it on cable at some point, but I'm not rushing out to go see Minions.
I had gotten a copy of it that was a pretty poor copy, so I didn't want to let the quality of the movie affect my opinion of it. The quality of the copy, physical medium that I had it in. So I gave up on watching it because I'm very much a movie snob when it comes to that. If something is formatted to full screen out of Letterboxd, I notice it and it takes me out of the movie.
Yeah.
If something's edited or something's changed, and this is just not a good copy from my screener copies, as I'll call them, that I received from a man whose name I don't know.
Nefarious sources.
Yes. I like to call it the movie gods present me with these opportunities to see things at a discounted price.
Fair enough.
I'm not stealing them. I'm paying them for them from somebody.
Yeah, or somebody. Number 7, movie that just, one of those franchises that kind of keeps rolling, and that falls into that young adult category, and that's The Hunger Games Mockingjay Part 2. Surprisingly, only took in about $275 million. And, I've kind of seen where I think that well, as far as those types of movies, it's kind of running a little dry. We've had the Twilight Saga. We've now had Hunger Games. Maze Runner is kind of not really performing well, as is the Divergent series. Because it kind of, at least to me, they all kind of seem to be some of the same movie.
Yeah, it's in that. I don't know what the genre is, that a young adult novel, but then it's in that, I guess, action genre is the best way, or, sci-fi fantasy. It varies in necessarily, I guess, what its theme is. But I think similar to comic books, I think it's a good place to tap in to get something. And if you make the movie the right way, I think it'll work out. I maybe they're flooding the market with them a little bit. It's, if you base something on a good book and you do it the right way, it'll work. But if there's a lot of things in there. If the book doesn't translate that well, if the fan base isn't that ready for that. And sometimes with a book, when you pin it down to a visual medium, you take away all that imagination out of it, and you hurt, something that's that based in a non-reality. When you try and translate it to film, it doesn't work.
Yeah, and then occasionally you get a book that shouldn't have sold any copies, and then they decide to make a movie out of it. It's horrible.
Yeah,
just like it should be, and that's coming in at number 16. But anyway,
I think like with the Harry Potter series, and part of it I think was J.K. Rowling being involved in it and saying that she wanted to keep it British and she wanted to keep it, and she was involved with different things and cast selection and those films, they all worked and people loved them and the audience got to grow up with it. And I guess it was Harry Potter that really started that trend of those movies.
Yeah.
The Lord of the Rings trilogy was there too. I guess they were a young adult novel when a young adult novel was just called a novel.
Yeah. Number 8 was a movie that I'm disappointed that I didn't go see, but I think it's coming out on DVD shortly, or it already is, and that's The Martian.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I missed The Martian, and I'm regretting. I know it's available, I think, on demand now.
Yeah,
I saw an advertisement for it, and I was intrigued with the trailer and that whole kind of a Robinson Crusoe type of story. Because I'd come across something recently that talked about Robinson Crusoe of Mars or Robinson Crusoe in space.
Yeah,
well, that was one of those like old Disney movies.
Yeah, and it looked really good. And as I said, I'm really disappointed in myself that I didn't get out and go see it.
Yeah, The Martian, I think, is one of those films that's, it made a lot of money and it got a lot of great reviews.
Yeah. Coming in at number 9, it was a movie I didn't see in the theater, but I did catch it on DVD, and I enjoyed it. Was Cinderella, and it was the live action Disney Cinderella, which I was pleasantly surprised that they didn't make the evil stepmother, a sympathetic character, and it was really that Cinderella was the evil, the evil one in the story. As Disney and whatnot.
You're still upset about that Maleficent movie.
I'm so pissed off about that Maleficent movie. Fucking hunk of shit. But anywho, and then coming in at number 10 was probably, after Star Wars and Jurassic World, my favorite movie of the year, and that was the most recent Bond movie, Spectre, which I loved from start to finish. And it's kind of, I'm kind of bummed that they're kind of leaning towards this being Daniel Craig's last Bond movie, because he kind of made me care about Bond again.
Yeah, and I haven't seen this one. I think I am 2 James Bond movies behind now. And this is Daniel Craig's 4th Bond.
This was actually his. Yeah, I think it might be his 4th one, because there was Casino Royale, Quantum of Solace, Skyfall, and Spectre. So I guess that's his 4th one. It was one of those movies that it kept me engaged the entire movie. There wasn't a point where I was going like, "Oh, this is done yet," which a lot of movies don't do anymore.
Yeah, so pretty much everybody I've talked to has dug that movie, and I was just happy that they brought the Spectre concept back, because that was one of my favorite things about the old Bond films.
And they mine too, and they brought it back and they tied it in very well. to his movies, his 4 movies, but also some nice nods to earlier Bonds, which was nice. So I do kind of hope that whatever direction they go with in the franchise now, if he doesn't come back, and in this one he literally kind of walks off into the sunset, so we really think that he's done. Hopefully they can keep it up, because I really, for the first time in quite some time, once Daniel Craig became Bond, I was happy with that. And he has 2 movies in the top 10 actually.
Yeah.
Because he had a cameo in The Force Awakens. After that, we kind of have some movies that might have been bigger than, or at least I thought they would have been bigger than they were. Number 13 was Ant-Man. And for as far as a Marvel movie goes, and the current Marvel universe, it didn't do so great. I can't say that I was that surprised, because it was a little bit of a weird movie.
It was a long reach in the concept, but it made money. It was reviewed well. It was a pretty minor character, I guess. That when you get into that Marvel world,
yeah. Mad Max Fury Road came in at number 20. That I kind of thought would have done a little better than it did, but I mean, it still did well. Or I guess I had hoped that it would do a little better.
Well, for a movie that made a good chunk of change, and it was kind of a sleeper. It was one of those movies that, what is it? It's 20, 25 years since the last time they made a Mad Max movie.
Yeah.
It was something that people were like, they're going to screw up Mad Max now. Like they'd screw, some of these other remakes or reboots or sequels from an old 80s franchise that they've dug back into. And this one wound up being kind of loved. Fans loved it. Critics loved it. What'd you say it was? It was 15th for the year?
20th for the year.
20th for the year. Okay.
20th for the year. And that's what I mean. Like, it got good reviews and it made decent money. I kind of had hoped that it would have done, it might have done a little better than it did. But I do think that that's a movie that more people are going to catch on cable or on DVD, and it might kind of get that cult following a little bit, kind of like the original series did.
Yeah, that people kind of discovered it later, because it really was it was an exploitation movie of the late 70s, early 80s.
Yeah. Coming in at 23 was actually, it was a movie that can be considered a surprise hit. And that's Kingsman: The Secret Service, which I finally caught recently. And if you haven't seen it, I highly recommend it. It's phenomenal.
Yeah.
It really was a fun movie.
That was another movie that everybody kind of saw and said, "Oh, this is a lot better than I thought it was going to be."
Yeah. Yeah. I caught it's on HBO, and I had heard good things about it all summer. I just never got around to seeing it. And then I finally saw it, and I'm like, this is a really good movie. A surprise, I would say this is a little bit of a disappointment. Would be The Good Dinosaur, which has been out, which is the Disney movie that looked pretty solid. It's been out for over a month now, and it's only done like $115 million. Which was a surprise. And now you start getting into stuff that like Terminator Genesis was another one that I thought was going to be bigger than it was. For all intents and purposes, that was a flop. I mean, it didn't even take in $90 million.
And that movie, with that movie, I feel like it killed itself in the trailer. Because
they gave away the twist.
Yeah.
And it started once it was released, even right before it was released, they gave away the twist in the movie. So it's like, okay, why do I need my $13 or whatever to go see it when I know what the twist is?
Yeah.
A movie that I knew wasn't going to do well, but I enjoyed immensely was Pixels.
Oh yeah,
that came in at 36. I enjoyed for what it was.
Pixels says also on some of these, it's on one or two of those worst movies lists.
I'm sure, and I mean that was the thing. I didn't go into that expecting it to be anything other than what it was. But it was nice to just be able to watch kind of a stupid Adam Sandler movie and kind of enjoy it for the first time in a while.
Yeah, I mean, it was a nostalgia piece. You know, it set itself up to kind of catch the attention of 40-year-olds and their sons. You know,
yeah. I loved the concept behind it. You know, is it going to win any awards other than worst movie of the year? No. And it wasn't. You know, it really wasn't a. You know, you go into, as I said, you kind of go into it. You get what you expect out of it, but I enjoyed it. And if you're a video game nerd, especially a video game nerd that's our age, I think if you go in and you watch it, I think you'll have, and you go in with no expectations, I think you'll have fun with it. One of the biggest flops of the year comes in at number 50, and that's a movie in our past podcasting life. We had no hopes for, and it delivered on the no hopes, and that was Fantastic Four. And that didn't even take in $60 million.
Yeah, for a big name comic book movie to shit the bed that bad, and for this to be the third go around, third time they gave us Fantastic. I got fourth time if you count that other Fantastic Four movie that never really came out in America.
In Gorman one?
Yeah, 92 or whatever that was.
Which we all have a bootleg copy of somewhere.
Yes. That one. Well, I think they released it in Japan, and it was one of those things that you were able to you used to be able to rent it at Blockbuster, but it never got that theatrical release. And I was thinking about it the other day that it's like as good as Marvel, because I finished the Jessica Jones series the other day,
which I have to finish up.
And I really, again, the Netflix did a great job with the Marvel stuff this time around. I do think it's funny that a R-rated series, I guess, like this, that features Luke Cage, who is also on the Disney Spider-Man series.
Yes.
I thought that was kind of funny, and I'm interested to see if they're gonna phase Luke Cage out of that cartoon a little bit for this year coming up. I guess is when his miniseries runs up.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that Jessica Jones series is fantastic,
but
it's not for the kids. That's
no. But as good as that is, and it's like, just let them have Fantastic Four back, and make something of it. Because it's possible to make a good Fantastic Four movie because they made The Incredibles.
Yeah, and that is The Incredibles is the best Fantastic Four movie we've ever seen.
Yes.
And they even pay homage to the Fantastic Four at the very end of of The Incredibles. With the Underminer. But
and who did the voice of the Underminer?
John Ratzenberger.
John Ratzenberger.
So that's kind of our at least our box office hits and misses for the year. I'm sure there's stuff in here that I'm missing, but I don't want to dwell on this.
Well, yeah, I got right here. I got Rotten Tomatoes. And this is the compiled reviews, and this is their top 100 best reviewed movies of 2015.
Okay.
And I guess I'll start from 10 and work down to go that way.
Okay.
And something called Room that I'm not at all familiar with came in at number 10. Not the no, yes. Oh my. Tommy Wiseau's The Room.
Which Riff Tracks is doing in like 2 weeks, I think.
Yeah, I don't know anything about this movie. There's a trailer here for it, but it doesn't really give me any information. Okay. But it was highly reviewed. Well, good for that. I don't know it. There's like a mom holding a kid in the picture in the poster for it. So I'll have to do a little bit. I'm failing in my research here. But number 9, with 96% positive reviews out of 199 reviews, It Follows, the horror movie.
Okay.
That was really like a sleeper thing. You didn't really hear anything about it. It came out, and everybody's like, that was pretty good. That was pretty good.
Yeah, I'm looking real quick to see if it was on the...
I don't think it made a ton of money. That horror movies, it's weird for them to make a lot of money. They always do a lot better on DVD and on demand and in that world, because nowadays, it's fun to be in a horror movie in a theater full of people and to get the reactions, but a lot of people would just assume go see it watch it at home.
That came in at 110.
110 million?
14 million.
Oh, 14 million. I was
it's number 110 on the list.
110 on the list. Okay.
Which, in the grand scheme of things, not horrible.
That's respectable for a horror movie, and a highly rated horror movie. And a highly rated horror movie means we're going to get...
Did better than Hot Tub Time Machine, too.
Oof.
That took in $12 million.
Yeah, that made a lot of worst movies lists, too, from what I've seen. A movie called Spotlight.
Okay.
Which, again, I don't know. It's it's got Liev Schreiber in it. Oh, it's a Mark Ruffalo, Michael Keaton, Rachel Adams, Liev Schreiber, Stanley Tucci.
No, it's got a good cast.
Yeah. Good, again, probably a smaller movie, one of those things that you're gonna you start to learn about after when the Oscars come out and different nominations. Yeah. Number 7, The Martian. 93% positive reviews, and it made a shitload of money.
Yeah.
I guess you can't really do a sequel to that unless they left them on Mars. Or, I guess you could do like 5 or 6 more sequels to it if he keeps getting stranded on other planets.
Yeah. The Jupiter and
and by the third one, it's just like a ridiculous comedy. Like, I can't believe this happened again.
Kind of like Die Hard.
I'm stuck on Uranus.
That joke just writes itself.
All right, there you go. You got a whole movie. I just there you go, Adam Sandler. You're welcome. The Uranianness. The ass. All right. Shaun the Sheep. 144 reviews, 99% positive. That's one of those stop motion pieces.
Yeah.
The Wallace and Gromit guy.
Yeah.
I forget their names, but the guys who do
Aardman Entertainment or whatever.
Yes.
I forget the guy who does. I forget who does the actual guy that does Wallace and Gromit. But if you haven't seen Wallace and Gromit, I highly recommend Wallace and Gromit.
Most of the stuff those guys do has been really enjoyable. Good family films. Not insulting to the adult mind at all. Smart, funny humor.
And if you have to pick one Wallace and Gromit, I recommend The Wrong Trousers.
Yes, yeah.
Just
was you got me hooked on that years ago. You showed me The Wrong Trousers, and I've been into that for a while. Brooklyn, which is a period piece about an Irish immigrant coming to New York in the 30s, I believe.
Okay.
That got 98% positive reviews.
Wow.
Which I don't think it made a lot of money. I don't think it was in the theaters long, but I heard a lot of great stuff about it. And this, it makes me so happy in my little Star Wars heart of hearts that Star Wars: The Force Awakens, out of 320 reviews, was 93% positive,
which is pretty damn good. And that 7% was probably just people just reviewing it negatively just to be that guy.
Just to be that guy. But for a movie to make $700 million in 3 weeks and have 93% positive reviews is a big thing. And and then there'll always be people that'll be like, well, Disney owns so many of those companies that are doing the reviews, so of course they're gonna,
All right. Review ever.
Yes. Yeah, I really just fell into that.
You really did. You just all of a sudden you just channeled comic book guy.
Yes, indeed. I'm trying to make this not a and I'm like consciously trying to make it that we just don't talk about Star Wars every podcast.
Yeah, well,
we are not a Star Wars podcast.
Yeah,
we are a podcast that loves Star Wars.
We are a podcast that loves Star Wars, and hey, if we might do a Star Wars podcast.
Maybe one day, yes, it could become as we are fleshing out the network. All right, number 3, Selma, which had already hit last year's Oscars, which was nominated for Best Picture. 99% positive reviews. I enjoyed Selma. It's by far not a fun movie to watch, but I almost feel like it's a movie that you gotta make every half of a generation so people don't forget, I guess.
Yeah.
The Martin Luther King stuff, when somebody's teaching it in school, it's one thing and it gets so separated, but when you're kind of seeing the story played out, it's I hate to say that it's very heavy-handed in its message, but it is very heavy-handed in its message, but it kind of needs to be.
Yeah.
It's, the message is, this is what happened. It's not like we're kind of thinking that maybe this is what could have, it wasn't that long ago, and when you watch it and you're like, holy shit, this wasn't that long ago, you're like, oh, my parents were alive when this happened.
Yeah.
This is out of the I hate to say it, out of the Best Picture nominations from last year, it was probably my least favorite movie, and it's nothing against that movie. I just felt it was up against some very strong competition.
Yeah.
And it's not like people didn't like it. It got very good reviews. I don't know how well it did. I'm sure it did okay in the box office for a, historical biopic. All right. And then, Selma, I feel like that Casey Kasem bit, I got to come out of a down number because Selma, which is, one of the most serious things you can make a film about, is bookended on one side by Star Wars The Force Awakens and on the other side by Inside Out, which we already talked about, that did very well in the box office, got reviewed fantastically.
And it was a quality movie. It was probably one of the best Pixar movies I've seen in recent memory.
And then, according to this Rotten Tomatoes list, the best reviewed movie with 333 reviews at 97% is Mad Max Fury Road. And, I mean, if you would have told me when they just started talking about this movie that not only was the movie going to be good, but it was going to be reviewed well, I would have never believed it.
I wouldn't have thought it would have been reviewed well. I thought it could have been good, but I wouldn't have expected it to be reviewed well. But that was another one of those movies that kind of, even in production, for me at least, we didn't touch on this earlier when we were talking about it, it kind of flew under the radar until I think Comic-Con, when it was like, oh, here's the Mad Max Fury Road trailer. And I think with the exception of the Episode 7 trailer, that was a trailer that I just went, wow, I need to see this.
Everybody had such low expectations for it. And then when you saw this movie with these fantastic practical effects and stunts and things, and you're like, wow, that's like a big movie.
Yeah.
And, in a time when everything's a big movie, it's like this thing came out and was like, we're going to show you what a big fucking movie is, and gave it to you.
Well, that's that might be one of those things now that all of a sudden, you've got, a few movies that did really well using practical effects. They were reviewed well. Maybe we'll start seeing a little bit more of that.
Yeah. Or, a nice blend of digital and practical effect, which we have said on on our other the podcast that we used to do, that's should be the future of film, to, use them both, use both elements of it and create some realism. Just to cherry pick a little bit from this list, because I'm not going to rattle off all 100 things. I was surprised that the Mission Impossible movie got good review. 93% positive reviews.
And that's the thing. I haven't seen it. I haven't seen a Mission Impossible movie since Mission Impossible 2, which I loved. I heard great things about Rogue Nation. And that's another one that I think is now on demand. I don't think it's on DVD yet. If it's not, it will be shortly. But yeah, I heard great things about it.
Now, this movie, I don't think it did very well, but 98% positive reviews was the Paddington movie.
I think the Paddington movie, and this is me being a giant kid, was I saw the trailer for the Paddington movie, I didn't even see the trailer. I saw the teaser for the Paddington movie, and I got excited because I remembered Paddington as a kid.
Right.
I think it didn't do very well. And I think the reason it didn't do very well is, unfortunately, I just think a lot of kids don't know who Paddington is. And then the trailer, it really didn't look good, but and
it might just be, I'm sure the books are still out there, but I think there's just so much competition for that.
Yeah.
For the kids' dollar now, that it's a tougher market for Paddington, for something like Paddington, that for us it was a bigger deal. 40 years ago, there weren't many things for young kids. If you were 4, 5, 6 years old, we had a very limited amount of things that were geared towards us.
Yeah.
And now you look at it, there's whole channels of things that are geared towards, young kids like that. So, and not that I'm not saying that that's not necessarily bad. It just, it dwindles things down. And I'm sure this will find a market. I'm sure parents who, in that perfect storm of a parent who grew up with that, who has kids that age, they're going to put it on for their kids. And
it didn't, in the grand scheme of things, it did respectably. I mean, it came in at 37 and made $76 million.
Yeah.
It had an $18 million budget, I think. It wasn't, it wasn't huge by any stretch of the imagination, but it didn't do poorly.
One of the movies, the movie that came in 20th on this list that was reviewed extremely well was the documentary, Kurt Cobain Montage of Heck. And I saw that and really enjoyed it. It was, the director does that unusual structure for a documentary where he doesn't have a narrator. It just kind of goes from segment to segment and clip to clip and interview to interview. And it moves you. It doesn't kind of tell you what to think. It lets you kind of form your own opinion.
Yeah.
And I think there were 2 Kurt Cobain documentaries that came out this year. There was Montage of Heck, and there was Soaked in Bleach, which is available on Netflix now. I have not watched yet.
It's on both. It's actually on both on Netflix and Hulu, but I haven't watched it yet.
But I really enjoyed Montage of Heck. It painted an interesting picture, and it was really a Kurt Cobain documentary, not necessarily a Nirvana documentary.
Yeah.
And it really delved into, it showed you a lot of like the inner workings of the guy. Creed was another movie that I've heard nothing but great things about that was reviewed really well. That was another surprise. I'm like, oh, an Apollo Creed movie, or an Apollo Creed's kid movie.
Yeah.
Doing well and reviewed well. And just keep that Rocky franchise going. Sylvester Stallone's 98 years old.
Not quite, but
he's getting there.
He's getting there.
As I'm flipping through this list, I'm just seeing if anything else jumps out at me is something. Another documentary, The Wrecking Crew, about the studio musicians out in Los Angeles that recorded a ton of shit in the 60s and 70s, worked on a ton of people's albums, and I can't recommend that documentary enough to people. Okay. And that's a much more lighthearted documentary. I mean, sometimes you get into a documentary that you leave and you're like, the Kurt Cobain one, it's deep and it's harsh, and you're like, holy shit, oh my God, this guy, he had so much talent and he was dealing with so much different types of pain for different reasons. This Wrecking Crew one is a lot more fun because you just kind of find out things about music that you've loved that you never knew, and you're like, oh, holy shit, that was, and you get to see kind of the people that played on so many songs that and you don't know these people's names. These people played on everything, the Beach Boys, the Monkees, the Sonny and Cher, but then they also
which is
played,
kind of what we talked about a little bit last week.
Yeah, when we were talking about the Monkees, I brought that up, and that was information I had gotten from this documentary. But what was also cool was these same people were playing. There was this guitar player in this group, this guy Tommy Tedesco. He played on all these classic songs, but then he also did the Batman theme, the Munsters theme, Gilligan's Island. I think he just played on all the TV show themes too. And it was this group of people that just played on a shitload of music that but you just didn't know them.
Yeah.
Beast of No Nation is something I have on my Netflix queue, and that was reviewed very well this year. That's what I think it has to deal with those African militia groups.
Okay.
I don't, again, my research isn't great, but I've heard a lot of good things about it, and haven't had a chance to check it out. The other one that, and then again, now switching back over to the lighter side, Trainwreck was reviewed very well this year, for a comedy too, to be reviewed this well.
Yeah.
And I love, the Amy Schumer, the things I've seen of her stand up and her TV show. I've loved all that stuff. And I'm glad that she had a film do this well, both critically and financially. It made money. And Cinderella's on this list. That was one of those money makers that was again reviewed well.
Yeah. And the movie surprised me. I didn't expect it to be done as well as it was.
I don't know if you still have your the list for what the movies made, the box office. How did the Peanuts movie do?
The Peanuts movie didn't do horribly. Came in 22. Took in about $129 million.
That's good. Again, another movie I wanted to check out, didn't see, but was reviewed really well. And it seemed like, and it seemed like it drummed up a lot of interest for kids, and that was just from the interaction I had seen with children that were talking about it. And I'm glad that those characters kind of maintained their timelessness, because they're getting to be, those characters are 50, 60 years old now too, right? They'll
at least.
Now for the other side of things.
the not so hot side of things.
The list I found here that I'm going to work off of is from the Telegraph, which is a British British
paper.
Yeah, British newspaper. And I'll just roll through the list. Taken 3.
Yeah, that's kind of going to the well one too many times, I think.
Yes. Mordecai, the Johnny Depp movie,
which nobody went and saw. Our former co-host on our in our former podcasting life saw it and enjoyed it.
Yeah,
but I haven't. He's the only person I've ever talked to that saw it.
I have a copy of it. I still haven't watched it yet, and I know it's just gotten awful reviews. But I almost feel like it kind of became cool to give a Johnny Depp movie a bad review, because he's kind of had, that last Pirates of the Caribbean didn't do great, and then Long Ranger was so weird. I almost feel like I'm equating it to personal backlash against Johnny Depp, because I've always liked Johnny Depp movies.
Yeah, I don't think I've seen a Johnny Depp movie that I didn't really like. I mean, there's some that I'm not giant fans of. Like, I'm not really a fan of his version of Willy Wonka. But some of that is because I grew up with the Gene Wilder version of Willy Wonka. That's no real reflection on Johnny Depp. But yeah, he had a string of stuff where he could kind of do no wrong after that first Pirates movie, and now I think there might be a little bit of backlash
on it. Number 3 on this list is The Wedding Ringer,
which was the Kevin Hart movie.
Kevin Hart, Josh Gad movie.
Okay.
Where I guess he was like teaching the guy, he was going to be the guy's best man. He was like a best man for hire type of thing.
Okay.
And that's another movie that I didn't see, and I didn't talk to anybody who saw. And I know Kevin Hart doesn't have the most discerning of choices in scripts.
Yeah,
I like Kevin Hart's comedy, but I don't know that his Yeah. This is the quote from the Telegraph is a crass comedy about an unpopular man, Josh Gad, who decides to hire a best man, Kevin Hart, and a group of groomsmen for his wedding. It's offensive, insincere, and far, far too long.
I can respect that review.
Yeah, that's
because that's kind of how that movie looked. It looked like it was going to be. It looked like it was going to be too long.
Now this is one of the problems I think of this being a British list. A Dark Reflection, which I'm not familiar with, which seems to be like a British artsy type of thing.
Okay.
So just skip over that. A Vince Vaughn movie called Unfinished Business.
Yes. It's been on HBO. I've gotten through about 10 minutes of it.
Okay. I don't even know that.
You would. I think if you saw the trailer, you would know it.
Is that the one when he's running around with? Is Nick Frost in that with him? Or is
he might be?
Oh wait, here. Oh, I'm looking at the cast now. Vince Vaughn, Dave Franco, Tom Wilkerson says. Yeah, I do. I just didn't know the movie was called that.
Yeah, that's another one that's been on HBO recently, and I've.
Okay, I do.
I tried it, and I just can't get through it.
Okay. Seventh Son, the Jeff Bridges wizard movie.
Which he's just starting to fall into that I'm playing the same character over and over and over again.
Yeah, he's just kind of become like an old man with a beard in films now. Yeah. Something called The Lost River that I'm not familiar with. And I don't know anybody in the cast, so it might be something British.
Okay.
Monsters Dark Continent. It's a sequel to something, it looks like. Garth Edwards' original Monsters was one of the cleverest alien invasion films of recent times, but its sequel, which relocates the monster hunting action from Africa to the Middle East, is merely grating and deafening.
Yeah. You said it was Gareth Edwards? That directed?
Yeah, Gareth Edwards, yeah.
Who is the guy that did Godzilla and is doing Rogue One.
Ah. Well, he did the original. There's other people involved in this one. Okay. So Ted 2 is on this list.
Not surprising.
Where I heard that was just they rehashed all the jokes from Ted 1 and
yeah, which that's kind of what it looked like. I haven't seen it. Kind of don't want to see it.
Yeah, just kind of beating a dead horse.
I think the first one kind of said all they needed to say.
Yeah. Hot Pursuit, the Reese Witherspoon, Sofia Vergara movie.
Yeah. See, when I think Hot Pursuit, I think John Cusack, Robert Loggia.
Yes.
I don't think those two. Which now I'm going to have to watch when I get off the...
Yeah, this is kind of... This was... shit, what's the one with De Niro and Charles Grodin? Midnight Run, yes. It really just looked like a girl's version of Midnight Run.
Yeah, I had no real plan to ever see it.
An Adam Sandler movie called The Cobbler.
Which I've seen. I know it's on Netflix. It might have been a direct-to-Netflix kind of thing or a very limited release. But again, I haven't heard anything about it.
Yeah, I haven't heard anything good about it.
Yeah.
The Transporter Refueled is on this list.
Yeah. Anything with refueled in the title, just skip it. Just right away, just skip it.
Yeah. The Victor Frankenstein movie is on this list.
Not surprising.
And I wanted that to be good. I just
I wanted
on
it to be
premise
good too,
and on cast, I'm like, oh, I like McAvoy, I like Radcliffe. I'm like, oh, this could be something. And
but it just looked, even in the trailers, it just looked kind of bad.
Yeah, it kind of had that weird stink to it.
Yeah. And again, it kind of came out at the wrong time of year too, because I think even if it was good, I don't think it would have. I think it would have been struggling to make some box office. That's for sure.
Now, I just pulled up an additional worst list just to kind of compare and contrast a little bit. And this one is from Rolling Stone. And they put America Ultra on there, American Ultra, which
was the Kristen Stewart,
Jesse
Eisenberg movie.
Yeah, secret spy movie.
Yeah, I have no desire, because I could go the rest of my life without ever seeing either one of them in another movie.
The Cobbler made the Rolling Stone list as well. The Entourage movie.
That's another one I haven't heard good things about. And that's another movie that probably came out too late. Entourage Entourage has been done for quite a few years now, hasn't it?
Yeah. I mean, I never really watched Entourage religiously. I would catch an episode every once in a while when it would come on after The Sopranos, and The Sopranos has been gone for a long time.
God, Sopranos has probably been gone for, I almost want to say 10 years now. I don't think it's been that long, but I know it's been gone for a while.
Fantastic Four made the Rolling Stone list.
As well it should.
Kevin Hart made the list again, but this time with Get Hard.
And see, now, I just caught Get Hard on HBO. And I can't lie, I kind of enjoyed it. I mean, it's Will Ferrell being Will Ferrell and Kevin Hart being Kevin Hart, but for me, it kind of worked.
Yeah,
it wasn't Oscar worthy by any stretch of the imagination, but and sometimes it's just, as I said with Pixels, it's just kind of fun to watch a stupid movie sometimes.
Hot Pursuit shows up again on this list.
Yeah. Not the John Cusack, Roger.
Not the John Cusack movie from the 80s. The Mordecai is on this list as well.
Yeah.
A Bradley Cooper, Jennifer Lawrence movie called Serena. 1930s period piece.
I vaguely remember seeing something about it, and I saw it, and I went, "Oh, they did a sequel to Silver Linings Playbook." And
some kind of melodrama, yeah.
Yeah, I just kind of saw, it's okay, those two in a movie together again.
Ted 2.
Not surprising.
On the list. Vacation.
Vacation for me just looked, again, I'm not surprised it's on the list. Vacation looked horrible from the get-go.
Yeah, it just kind of fell flat. It felt like it was going to be flat. And, it was one of those movies, like the jokes and all the other vacation movies worked well, and this just kind of felt like they were just going for that lowbrow. I mean, not that the vacation movies weren't lowbrow humor at times, but it just felt like they were trying too hard, and it kind of felt like everything that's been shot down the pipe the past couple of years. The Hangover movies, which were pretty good, and it just kind of seems like all the same jokes over and over again. And I'm not really a huge fan of Ed Helms. I liked him on The Office.
That's the kind of the extent of my Ed Helms fandom.
Yeah, and again, I always say reviews are very subjective. I like the Rotten Tomatoes concept because if multiple people don't like something, then maybe that means something, or multiple people do like something. I tend to agree with a movie that's positively reviewed, and occasionally I do, more than occasionally, there are movies that are reviewed that have awful reviews that for whatever reason I like. I mean, sometimes I can't stop watching a bad movie.
I love a good bad movie. But then sometimes there are just those movies that are just a bad movie. There is nothing good about them. I mean, the two of us have sat around and watched some awful fucking movies, but enjoyed every minute of it.
That stupid movie we watched with the monsters in the wrestling thing, the
Monster Brawl? Oh, stupid fucking movie. But I enjoyed the whole hour and a half or whatever of it. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, it was a fun, silly, stupid movie, but I'd watch it again. It's just it had its it was gimmicky. It was everything. If you explain it to somebody, you're like, "Oh, that sounds stupid," and you're like, "Yeah, it is stupid, but we still watched it."
Yeah, it was absolutely stupid, but I thoroughly enjoyed it.
And actually, everybody I've talked to that have seen it is like, "Oh yeah, it was kind of a fun movie." I even talked to one guy that was in it, and he was like, "Ah, it's a fun movie to make."
I'm sure.
So I think that, I mean, we talked about the good, the bad, and the ugly there for 2015.
Yeah, at least movie wise.
Yeah, at least movie wise, which we were going to kind of focus on. I mean, we have a great lineup of movies, I think, coming out for 2016 that we're excited about. Action movies, comic book movies, another Star Wars movie.
Another Star Wars movie in 5 months. Which I kind of hit me today. Like, ooh, we have another Star Wars movie in 5 months. It's a good time to be a Star Wars fan.
Indeed.
Who knew 2016 would be a good time to be a Star Wars fan?
Yeah, if you told me that 10 years ago, I might not have believed it.
No, but now I'm happy. I'm a happy nerd.
Yeah, I'm psyched for a lot of the comic book things that are coming up. I'm finally going to get that Batman Superman movie, where I'm, now that I've seen a little bit more of it and it's structured to, the trailer that's come out recently really has me hooked on it.
I'm gonna give it a shot. I know
you've been you've had negative feelings from it pretty much from its inception.
Yeah, and a lot of that just stems from the fact that I didn't enjoy Man of Steel. And I'm probably gonna catch a lot of shit for this, but I didn't really enjoy Nolan's Batman stuff all that much either. It wasn't horrible. I wasn't like, oh my god, these are the greatest movies ever made. A lot of the Marvel movies aren't the greatest movies ever made. I just tend to, I even in my comic book reading, I tended always to lean Marvel. I want it to do well. I do. And it will. It's gonna do well. I did see some comment, and this is again Star Wars related in a way, where somebody had made a comment, yeah, Star Wars is going to rule the box office until Batman Superman comes out. Not a chance. I don't think anything is touching Star Wars for any length of time. I think the only thing that's going to touch Star Wars is Star Wars at this point.
I think Star Wars, I don't think Batman Superman will do that well. but the anticipation for it is this is something I've been waiting for forever. For there to be that, Justice League movie.
Yeah, and I mean, and in that respect too, is for all intents and purposes, we've been talking about this movie for 2 years. So it better be good. But I mean, I'm gonna go see it.
And then on the other side of the coin, as far as comic book media and anticipation is, we got that second half of the Walking Dead season coming up in 2000.
We've got a bunch of Walking Dead coming up. Actually, we've got the second half of season 6 of The Walking Dead, and then coming up later this summer, leading up to season 7 of The Walking Dead, we've got Fear the Walking Dead. And in the meantime, we've also got this web series, Flight 427 or something like that. So I mean, we've definitely got our fill of Walking Dead. I liked the first half of this season 6 of the main show. I'm a little on the fence about Fear the Walking Dead.
Yeah,
I'm probably going to give that at least another season to kind of see where they go with it, and then decide if I'm going to stick with it.
Yeah, I wasn't a giant fan either.
The characters just annoyed the shit out of me, and some of that is, I think, because we've been living in this, as far as The Walking Dead goes, we've been living in this world for 6 seasons now. And now this is taking us basically back to the beginning 6 years ago.
Mm.
So we all know, like, hey, don't touch them. They're going to bite you. You're going to die. You're going to become a zombie or a walker or whatever. But as far as the characterization on that show, there wasn't one person maybe the old man. I was rooting for him to survive. But I think everybody else, I'm just like, you know what? I want you to get eaten.
Yeah, I agree with you. It was I didn't find a sympathetic character necessarily in that show, or at least out of the main characters.
Yeah.
And I think right now with the regular Walking Dead, where it's setting itself up to go, at least from the for where it's taking stuff, the cues it's taking from the comic book series, a lot of interesting things could and might happen now with this new series, and the pacing could definitely change.
Yeah, the one thing that I'm a little disappointed with in the grand scheme of the TV show The Walking Dead is I feel like they're kind of rushing to a point. Like bringing in the Negan character, I kind of wish they would have dragged that out a little bit longer. I kind of understand why they're not, but I kind of feel there's more story that could be told in between that.
Yeah, and I mean, they still might. They've done a good job of varying the stories from the original media, from the comic book.
Yeah, absolutely. But I just at times, and I've kind of felt this from the get-go. There's been a lot of storyline that they've kind of rushed, and then there's been storyline that they've just dragged on too long. I do like the first half of the season where it basically took place over like 24, 48 hours.
Yes. Yeah, that was a neat concept that they worked with this season, and I enjoyed that.
Where you have, you're wondering what happened to a certain character, and for you, it's 6 weeks, but in all honesty, it's just a couple hours.
Yeah.
So it's definitely going to be interesting to see when that, where that goes. I think that comes back Valentine's Day. I think is the date they have it penciled in for. And again, Fear the Walking Dead is later this summer. I'll give it the second season, and I'll make up my mind on that. We've got on Netflix, we've got the second season of Daredevil coming up. Which means I have to finish the first season of Daredevil. We touched on earlier, we've got Luke Cage coming up, Iron Fist as well.
Well, Iron Fist, they haven't. The Luke Cage, they're just filming, and I think that's going to come out later this year. I think that's going to be out in the fall. Iron Fist, they just named the showrunner, and they haven't cast anybody in it yet.
Oh, really? I was under the impression that was hitting this year as well.
No, Iron Fist is I think they're being a little indecisive about it because Iron Fist, you're going to get into some different things. I almost feel like they want to wait until Doctor Strange comes out before they make the Iron Fist.
Okay.
Because if they're going to lay out the mystical stuff, they're going to need, they might need the basis for it to kind of exist in the main Marvel universe first, in that cinematic stuff. I did read an interesting article that a guy had written. I have it here. Let me see. At least I thought I had it here. And it was talking about the casting of Iron Fist, and it was written. The guy who wrote it was of Asian heritage. And he was talking about how he hopes that they don't make Iron Fist an Asian character. They change that, if they're going to do their first mainstream character then. Because as much as he'd love to see an Asian character in that Marvel universe, he doesn't want it to be the Kung Fu guy, right off the bat.
And that does kind of make sense to me.
Yeah, and I read. I don't see this guy's article. I must have gotten rid of it, but it was a. I'm just flipping through real quick, and all right. Anyway, I don't see it, but the main gist of it, and I completely agreed with the guy. I'm like, if you're gonna cast, it just seems like you'd be by trying to do something good, you'd almost be undoing it. But it's that double-edged sword of, all right, here we have we're going to cast a white guy in a Kung Fu role, which was one of the biggest criticisms of the Kung Fu TV series back in the 70s. It was supposed to be Bruce Lee's TV series, and they cast David Carradine in it because they felt an American audience didn't want to see an Asian guy on TV.
I just had a moment of clarity, and I know who they should cast in the Iron Fist role.
Okay.
And this is me being completely ridiculous. They should get the guy that did Kung Fury.
I have heard that.
Sorry, I couldn't resist.
Yeah. That would be awesome.
That would be awesome.
In a similar but unrelated story, I did hear something recently about a possible Kung Pao sequel.
Oh, okay.
And Kung Pao is one of those, again, that's a stupid movie that I loved.
Yeah.
That I had somebody turn me on to that, and I couldn't stop watching that dumb thing. But entertainment-wise, the 12-year-old in me is very enthusiastic about 2016, the year coming up. All these things that I never thought I was going to get to see as a film.
And one thing we're forgetting is we're a little more than a month away from Deadpool.
Yeah, that we're going to get our rated R comic book movie that we've wanted. You know, at least since the big comic book explosion. In a way, that first Blade movie, I think, was rated R.
Yeah. And that Dolph Lundgren Punisher movie might have been rated R.
Might have been. I don't know. I think it would have needed a cinematic release to have an actual rating.
It didn't get released in theaters?
I don't believe so.
No.
I just shook my head no on a audio podcast.
They heard it. Everybody heard it.
What a jackass.
But yeah, I mean, it's 2016 is shaping up so far. At least the first half, they're shaping up to be pretty solid. You got Deadpool, we've got Batman, Superman, we've got Captain America, we've got another Star Wars.
Oh, you know what we haven't really talked about that it has come out. I mean, we talked about it slightly, I think, a little bit last week, but The Hateful Eight.
Yes,
the Quentin Tarantino film.
The Quentin Tarantino movie.
That I am super psyched for and want to go out and see. But I want to like go out and see it right. I know they're showing it that with the 70 millimeter viewing, and I don't know if they're still doing that. But that's an investment. You know, you're looking at a 3-hour movie or something like that. So I'm psyched for it, but not, it's one of those things like, all right, I got an hour or two to kill here. You got to invest most of your day now because you figure a 3-hour movie and 15 minutes of trailers, and buying some popcorn and driving back and forth. You're looking at a 4 or 5 hour investment, and you didn't even go out to dinner or anything yet.
Suck it up.
Yeah. Hey, as I was flipping through my articles that I had saved here, and this has nothing to do with anything we were talking about, but did you see any of these pictures of the forensic facial reconstruction that they did on a bottle of Crystal Skull vodka?
I did. Which, if those of you that don't know, the Crystal Skull vodka is Dan Aykroyd's vodka, his brand of vodka.
Yeah, it's a high end. I mean, it's expensive. It
is. I have a tiny, tiny little bottle, and I don't even really like vodka, so I don't know why I have a tiny little bottle of it. But
it's a cool bottle. I mean, it's a Crystal Skull.
Badass bottle.
It's a pretty cool bottle, but it's $50 a bottle.
Yeah,
for some quality vodka. I've heard good things about it, but it's a funny bit. It's definitely worth checking out just to see the pictures and see the process of them doing forensic facial reconstruction on a glass vodka bottle,
which is just ridiculous,
but fun, and that's what the internet's for.
Absolutely, that's why we're here.
Yes, it's for dumb shit and hollering at people.
Absolutely, and that's what we do best. Although I think we're 6 episodes in, and I don't think we've hollered at anybody yet.
Yeah,
I don't think I've really yelled. Maybe a little bit last week, but I don't think I really yelled.
Yeah, we bitched a little bit last week.
I haven't blown my mic out, so that's a positive, man. 2016 is gonna be my year
to not yell like a maniac.
Not yell like a maniac.
Well, I think we covered a good chunk of our entertainment thing. I think that's a good point where we can wrap up.
I think that is a good.
I threw a little nonsensical vodka bottle facial reconstruction thing out there,
which is always cool. So check that out, and if you like vodka and you have $50 to spend, buy a bottle. We don't get any proceeds though, so. But anyway, yeah, I guess that's where we will wrap up. Hopefully, our 2016, as far as the Channel Z and the podcasts and the Planet X and Hot Tag podcasts, will be a big year for us.
It'll be our year of coming out, but in a entertainment way, not in that other way.
Not in that other way.
Not that there's anything wrong with that.
No, not that there's anything wrong with that. But we don't need any letters. You know, it's all good.
If any other podcasts want to come out, we fully support your life decisions.
We've coming up that we will be at. The one we're pretty positive we'll be at is the one we've been at the past couple of years, which is AmazeCon. That's in April. So yeah, I think it'll be a good year all around. So you know where to find us. We're on both iTunes and Stitcher, and pretty much any other podcast application you can find out there. You can check us out on the Channel Z Podcasts at WordPress.com, Facebook.com/Channel Z Podcasts. Again, you want to email us, you want to bitch at us, you want to you just want to shoot the shit. Shoot us an email at channelzpodcasts@gmail.com. So we will see you next week. I'm Chris.
And I'm Mike.
And it's going to be a good year, man.
Yes. It'll be a very good year.